This is a sculpture that I made in college. It's completely falling apart. There was a little girl and Death sitting on a park bench. Death was feeding birds birdseed. There were some pigeons, and her legs have fallen off. So the assignment in college was to combine something that was cast metal with multimedia, whatever we wanted. So it was polymer clay, little skeletons climbing up the hill toward the bench, meaning that Death doesn't ever get a day off, but this was sort of his day off. So he was cast aluminum, Death was, and then everything else was polymer clay. The sides of the bench were made with polymer clay originally, and then I used wooden dowels, square dowels, to make the slats that went across the bench, and I baked it all together. I just put it together in the polymer clay and then baked it all together, and it worked really well until some time when I moved, everything just like fell apart and her face got all mangled and things just got too damaged to save. So I remade the bench, was 3D printed. I drew it in SketchUp based on a photograph that I found, and then we 3D printed the bench, and then made the girl out of polymer clay again. So I started with an armature. I used some armature wire and built an armature, and then filled in her torso with some aluminum foil. That way you don't have to use as much clay, because the clay is expensive, and also it's lighter weight, and also it's less likely to crack and fall apart. And her legs aren't going to fall apart this time. They're not going to drop off of her body this time because she has an armature in there to hold it all together. When I was in college, I was working full-time as the lead scenic artist for a local scenic studio, and so I was working 40 to 60 hours a week, and I had a full class load. I was going to school full-time, so a lot of my classwork kind of suffered. The projects, I didn't have quite the time to dedicate to it that most of my peers were dedicating to their work. But I think, the original sculpture, I liked it well enough that I kept it, but I always thought that I could do a better job, especially of painting it. Especially her face just was the biggest rush job. It was like slap some paint on there and let's get out the door right before it was due, I'm pretty sure. So it was nice to be able to revisit it and remake it. Again, this is my first time using Super Sculpey Firm, which is the gray Super Sculpey. The pink Super Sculpey is the original, and it's softer. Firm is really hard, so it's easier to get tiny details, but it's also harder to reshape things. I'm used to being able to like squish things a lot more, and so it was a little bit of a struggle with this head to get it to work the way I wanted it to, because boy oh boy, this clay is tough. But I could kind of get cleaner details in her teeth and her eyes. So since I could get cleaner details in her teeth, I thought, well, I'll make her a little bit bucktooth. And so she's a little bit bucktooth, which is cute, but also awkward. In the final piece, I'm not sure if I like the buck teeth, but, we'll see. You be the judge. What do you think? Do you like the buck teeth?
I didn't even notice the buck teeth.
Oh, okay. Do you like the original girl or the new girl better?
The new girl, because she has more details on her face.
Yeah. The hair, I just put blobs of clay on her head and then scored some texture in, and then I added some individual rolled out little hair strands.
And Mommy thought her hair looked weird, so she added a giant bow, and I think it helped.
It did look weird, but the bow was always going to be there. There was a bow on the first girl. Yeah, she had a bow in her hair. It wasn't purple, but she had a bow in her hair. This is you, Sam, making your pumpkin. So I decided that since it's Halloween, we'd put some jack-o'-lanterns in the scene. So everybody made a jack-o'-lantern. This is Sam's. Tyler helped her get the twisty top for it. Jack-o'-lanterns in polymer clay. You kind of roll out a ball and then you make a face. It's a good place to start if you're a beginner, because it's a simple little project, and they turn out so cute. And this is Daddy's. Daddy making his little jack-o'-lantern. His is sort of a skull situation going, so he did that.
It's Jack Skellington.
It kind of is. It's a stylized skull. They all kind of look like Jack when you do a skull like this. But he's got sort of that seam in the skull that goes down the middle. He kind of put that in first, and then put in the ridges for the pumpkin, put on the little stem. Here's Tyler's pumpkin. What do you want to say about your pumpkin?
I just wanted to do just a cute little quick face.
Yours is so cute. This is the least spooky, for sure.
Just a cute little face. Simple.
Ty's a simple one.
I love your leaf. The texture you put on the leaf is super, super cute and really simple. This is the scythe for Death. So I made the handle out of regular Sculpey original and then made the blade out of the firm. This is Sam painting her little pumpkin after it baked in the oven and cooled completely.
Yeah.
So you did a couple layers of orange and you made your eyes glow. Nobody else's eyes glow. I painted the other two pumpkins and I made black eyes. Here's the 3D printed park bench. It's been painted black and now it's getting some dry brushing, green on the sides and brown on the wooden parts. Some bloop, bloop, bloop. Paint, paint, paint. On a paper plate, so fancy. And I've got house paint, like from a gallon bucket in ketchup bottles. It's really handy to just squirt out little bits, but it's cheaper than getting craft paint if you're going to be doing large paintings, you need the big quantities anyway. So now I'm painting. We're basing out the face. I'm trying to get some shading because her face ended up a little bit wide in like the temple region. So I was sort of trying to, I was trying to do some, what do you call that? When it's makeup, you do...
like contour?
Contour! That's exactly what I mean. Yes. I was doing some contouring on her. Didn't exactly work. And I ended up actually going back and shaving down the sides of her head just slightly in that area with a X-Acto knife after I did the base coat. You'll notice that as this progresses, we start out with a clean piece of cardboard, and the further into the project we get, the grosser the cardboard is, and at the end it's just covered in paint. And you'll also notice that this was done over the course of several days because some days my hands don't have any paint on them. Some days they have the red and black and white paint. I also have purple fingers in one of the shots. The purple fingers are from the second project in this video, Samantha's Halloween costume. Here's the finished piece. I shot it outside because it seemed appropriate because he's supposed to be at the park. It's really funny, the original sculpture, the birds were pigeons because like park bench pigeons, it made sense. And then when I was making them this time, I literally in my head was thinking, okay, now I got to make the seagulls. And I made seagulls. And then, I baked them and I painted them, and I was looking at them after I painted them and I was like, wait, seagulls? What happened? So now it's a park bench at the beach, I guess. We do live in California, so seagulls are a thing. There's the little pumpkins. They're so cute. They turned out so good.
Yeah.
I love it. There we go. Sam designing her Halloween costume. She designed her first Halloween costume when she was 3. She was a reindeer skeleton octopus.
Yeah.
And I was a space vampire.
Ty was a space vampire that year, and Sam loves that space vampire dress. So she designed her spooky mermaid based on that dress. We're using what we've got around the house. So this was an old pillowcase that we made into Sam's mermaid tail. So we've got step 1, I cut it off to be the right height for a skirt for her. Step 2 was sewing a pocket for the elastic for the waist and cutting that sort of notch for that shape of the mermaid tail. And then step 3 was to give it the shape along the sides of the mermaid tail. So turned it inside out and stitched the sides to give it that sort of suck-in curve. But we didn't want to go too far because she's got to be able to walk in it. So I like this design because the tail is where the feet go, so it flares out where her feet are, so she still has a little bit of movement. It kind of sucks in around her shins a little bit, but not too much. Unfortunately, since it was a pillowcase, I didn't have a whole lot of wide to work with. It would have been nice if the tail could have flared out more, but it was cute. So I had an idea to use this cup to trace with a Sharpie these scale shapes and layer them up, and then we used alcohol markers to do some shading and some color, and then we used some paint pens to do some highlights. If we wanted to make it permanent, then we could heat set it with an iron. So this is drawing the scales on the mermaid tail and detailing the fin at the bottom, adding the highlights, because I'm a big believer in highlights and shadows. And then Sam came through and she added the bling.
Yeah,
She did sparkles and stars. So adorable.
because I wanted mine to be like kind of rock and roll, but like not rock and roll.
This was putting the scales on the shirt, old shirt we had. Drew some scales on it. Same method with the Sharpie and then the alcohol markers. And then here I'm adding some acrylic paint, some metallic acrylic paint to the bottom fins to make them stand out a little bit. And then adding, these are leftover bits of the beaded stingers from the jellyfish from last week's video. And then this is coloring with an alcohol marker, those white jellyfish tentacle-y things, and adding them to the bottom of the fins to give it a little more.
That's why her hands are
flair.
purple.
That's why my hands were purple. You're right. You had sort of a Victorian vibe going. This is Sam adding some bling to her crown. She wanted a floating crown like in Roblox.
Yeah.
And she wanted horns. So I used one of these little kitty cat headbands, and I could just slice the horns and stick them on. And then I used some floral wire to raise the crown off her head. It's so cute. So you can see, we blinged up some boots for her too. But we raised up the middle of the skirt of the dress, and she painted the horns herself. I love how it turned out. It's so cute.